Nobody noticed him, but every night at 10 p.m. he carefully folded a napkin over the leftovers. In the bustling restaurant, amid the clinking of glasses and laughter of patrons, there was one figure who moved silently, almost invisibly. He was just a waiter, or so it seemed. For 5 years, he had served countless meals, refilled endless glasses, and cleared away innumerable plates. But he had never once sat down as a customer himself. How many words can fit in an empty gaze? He served tables, but life didn't serve him. His eyes told a story of unspoken pain, of dreams deferred, of a past that weighed heavily on his shoulders. Yet he moved with quiet dignity, attending to his duties with meticulous care. One detail caught the eye of a silent observer, the way he hid the bread. A regular customer had been watching for weeks, intrigued by this small, puzzling ritual. Why would a waiter, surrounded by abundance, secretly tuck away scraps? The restaurant was nearly empty, chairs stacked on tables, when a deep voice broke the silence. "How much is he worth to you?" The manager looked up, confused. The other staff paused in their closing duties, exchanging puzzled glances. All eyes turned to the card machine as it blinked an impossible number. The amount entered was more than all the meals of the night combined. "There must be some mistake," the manager stammered. But the stranger's eyes never left the waiter. "Soldier," the man said softly before turning to leave. That single word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. How could this stranger know? What secrets lay hidden behind that crisp white apron? Beneath the mound of leftover rice, he found a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing a handwritten note. "You taught me the meaning of dignity." The words blurred as tears welled in his eyes. He never showed emotion, not in 5 long years of service. But when he saw what was inside that brown paper bag, he fell to his knees in the middle of the dining room. It wasn't money, it wasn't fame, but it was the greatest payment he had ever received in his entire life. The next morning his name was on TV, not out of charity, but because of courage. The city learned who he really was, not just a waiter but a hero who had sacrificed everything for others. Before serving the final dessert of his shift, he paused and said with a smile, "Today, I finally ate first." It was more than just a meal. It was a reclaiming of his humanity, his dignity. The invisible routine had been shattered. For years, no one had truly seen him. He was just another face in an apron, clearing tables and refilling water glasses. But beneath that unassuming exterior lay a story of resilience, of quiet strength in the face of adversity. Each carefully folded napkin over leftover food told a tale of resourcefulness born from necessity. In a world of excess, where plates returned to the kitchen half full, he saw sustenance others overlooked. It wasn't greed that motivated him, but a deep-seated understanding of what it meant to go without. The weight of silence had been his constant companion. How many unspoken words, how many stifled dreams, how many muffled cries of pain had he carried within him? He moved through the restaurant like a ghost, present yet unseen, serving others while his own soul remained unnourished. But someone had been watching. In the sea of faceless customers, one pair of eyes had noticed the small gestures, the careful way he tucked away a crust of bread, the fleeting sadness that crossed his features when particularly lavish meals were left unfinished. For 5 long years, he had never allowed himself the luxury of being a guest. The tables he so carefully set and cleared were a world apart from his reality. Until that night when a chair was pulled out for him, inviting him to sit, to be served, to be seen as a person worthy of care and attention. The stranger's question echoed through the empty restaurant. "How much is he worth to you?" It was a challenge, a reckoning. In that moment, the true value of a human being, not as a worker, not as a servant, but as a soul deserving of dignity, hung in the balance. The blinking numbers on the card machine told a story of their own. It wasn't just about money, it was about worth, about seeing the invaluable in what others had overlooked. The confusion on the faces of the staff spoke volumes. How could this quiet, unassuming man be worth so much? Soldier. That single word unlocked a floodgate of memories. It spoke of battles fought far from this peaceful dining room, of sacrifices made and horrors witnessed. The apron he wore now was a far cry from the uniform he once donned, but the sense of duty, of service, remained unchanged. The note hidden beneath the rice was more than just words on paper. It was recognition, validation, a lifeline thrown to a drowning soul. You taught me the meaning of dignity. In his lowest moments, when he felt invisible and worthless, he had unknowingly been a beacon of hope to another. The brown paper bag held no material treasure, but its contents were priceless. As he fell to his knees, overcome with emotion, the barriers he had so carefully constructed over the years crumbled. In that moment, he was not a waiter, not a soldier, but simply a human being, raw and vulnerable. The city's awakening to his true identity was a revelation. The quiet man who had moved among them, unnoticed and unappreciated, was a hero. His courage was not the loud, brash kind that demanded attention, but the steady, enduring type that perseveres in the face of obscurity and hardship. His final act of serving dessert became a symbol of transformation. Today, I finally ate first. It was a declaration of self-worth, a reclaiming of his right to nourishment, not just of the body but of the soul. He had spent so long putting others first. It was time to acknowledge his own needs, his own value. As the story spread, it challenged those who heard it to look deeper, to see the humanity in every person they encountered. How many others moved through life unseen, their stories untold, their worth unrecognized? The restaurant became more than just a place of business. It transformed into a testament to the power of compassion and recognition. Customers began to look at the staff differently, to see them as individuals with hopes, dreams, and struggles of their own. For the waiter, now known by name and celebrated for his past heroism, life took on new meaning. The weight of silence lifted, replaced by the warmth of community and understanding. He stood taller, smiled more freely, no longer burdened by the need to hide his true self. Yet he never forgot the lessons of those difficult years. The carefully folded napkins remained a part of his routine, not out of necessity now, but as a reminder of where he had been and how far he had come. He used his newfound platform to advocate for others like him, veterans struggling to reintegrate, workers in the service industry fighting for dignity and fair treatment. The stranger who had set this transformation in motion became a regular at the restaurant. He and the former waiter would often sit together, sharing quiet conversations that spoke volumes. Two soldiers from different wars, perhaps, but united in their understanding of sacrifice and the long journey home. As weeks turned to months, the initial media frenzy died down, but the impact of that night lingered. The restaurant instituted new policies to support veterans and those in need. A small plaque appeared near the entrance, not grandstanding, but simply stating, "Every person has value, every story deserves to be heard." For those who knew where to look, the evidence of change was everywhere. It was in the way the staff interacted with each other and with customers, with a new level of respect and camaraderie. It was in the donation box by the register, always full, supporting local charities. It was in the free meals offered discreetly to those who couldn't afford to pay. But perhaps the most profound change was invisible to the eye. It was in the hearts and minds of those who heard the story, who were challenged to look beyond appearances, to seek out the hidden heroes in their midst. In a world that often feels divided and uncaring, it was a reminder of the power of a single act of kindness, of truly seeing another person. As for the waiter-turned-hero, he found a new balance in life. He still worked shifts at the restaurant, not out of necessity now, but because it grounded him, reminded him of the value of hard work and humility. But he also spent time speaking to veterans groups, counseling those who struggled as he once had. Each night, as the restaurant wound down and the last customers departed, he would pause for a moment. In the quiet of the empty dining room, he would remember the years of invisibility, the weight of silence, the desperate gratitude for every scrap of food. And then he would smile, thankful for second chances, for the strangers who become saviors, for the power of being truly seen. In the end, it wasn't about the money or the recognition or even the redemption. It was about the fundamental truth that every human being has inherent worth. That behind every face, the waiter, the soldier, the stranger, there's a story waiting to be heard, a life waiting to be valued. And so, as he turned off the lights and locked the door each night, he carried with him a new mission, to never let another person feel as invisible as he once had. For in the simple act of truly seeing others, we all have the power to change a life, to restore dignity, to illuminate the heroes walking unnoticed among us. Nobody noticed him. But every night at 10 p.m. he carefully folded the napkin over the leftovers. In the bustling restaurant, amid the clinking of glasses and the hum of conversation, there was one figure who moved silently, almost invisibly. He was the waiter, always there, yet never truly seen. His routine was clockwork. As the last diners trickled out and the chairs were stacked, he would make his way to each table. With practiced hands, he'd gather the remnants of meals barely touched, wrapping them gently in crisp white napkins. To others, it might have seemed odd, a man in his 50s, treating scraps with such reverence. But for him, it was a ritual of survival and dignity. How many words can fit in an empty gaze? He served tables, but life didn't serve him. Years of carrying trays and taking orders had etched lines into his face, but it was his eyes that told the real story. They were windows to a soul heavy with unspoken words, weighed down by dreams deferred and a life lived on the margins. In those eyes, you could see the weight of silence, the kind that comes from being perpetually present, yet perpetually overlooked. He moved through the restaurant like a ghost, refilling water glasses and clearing plates. But while he nourished others, his own spirit seemed to wither a little more each day. The irony wasn't lost on him, surrounded by abundance, yet always hungry for something more than just food. A customer watched in silence. One detail caught his attention: the way he hid the bread. Among the sea of faces that passed through the restaurant each night, there was one that began to take notice. A middle-aged man, impeccably dressed, who came in alone several nights a week. At first glance, he seemed like any other patron, enjoying his meal, absorbed in his phone or a book. But his eyes, keen and observant, followed the waiter's movements with growing curiosity. It was the bread that first caught his attention. The way the waiter would discreetly tuck away an untouched roll or two, slipping them into his apron pocket when he thought no one was looking. It wasn't theft, not really. These were discards, destined for the trash. But the care with which he handled them spoke volumes. Night after night the customer watched. He saw how the waiter's hands trembled slightly as he pocketed those morsels, the furtive glances to ensure no one had seen. It was a dance of desperation and pride, played out in the shadows of the dining room. In 5 years of work, he had never sat as a customer, until a chair was pulled out for him. The restaurant was his world, but it was a world in which he never truly belonged. For 5 long years, he had circled those tables, memorized the menu, known the rhythms of the kitchen, but never once had he experienced the simple pleasure of being served, of sitting down to a meal prepared just for him. His breaks were spent in the alley behind the kitchen, hurriedly eating whatever scraps he could cobble together. The idea of actually sitting at one of those pristine tables, of being waited on, it seemed as foreign and unattainable as a trip to the moon. But on this night, something shifted. As he made his final rounds, wiping down tables and straightening chairs, he felt a presence behind him. Turning, he found himself face to face with the observant customer. Without a word, the man pulled out a chair and gestured for the waiter to sit. The restaurant was already closing when a deep voice asked, "How much is he worth to you?" The silence that followed was deafening. The manager, who had been counting the till, looked up in confusion. The few remaining staff members froze, unsure of what was happening. In the dim light of the nearly empty restaurant, the scene felt almost surreal. The customer, the one who had been watching for weeks, stood tall, his voice carrying an authority that demanded attention. His question hung in the air, heavy with implication. "How much," he repeated, "is this man worth to you?" The manager stammered, clearly caught off guard. I don't understand. He's an employee. We pay him his wages." But the customer cut him off with a wave of his hand. "That's not what I asked. I want to know what his dignity is worth, his humanity, the years of service he's given this place." Everyone looked confused. The machine blinked. The amount entered was higher than all the meals combined. The tension in the room was palpable as the customer strode to the register. With deliberate movements, he pulled out a credit card and handed it to the stunned manager. "Run it," he said simply. As the manager swiped the card, the machine came to life. Numbers flashed across the screen, climbing higher and higher. The staff watched in disbelief as the total surpassed not just the night's earnings, but likely a week's worth of revenue. When the final amount appeared, there was an audible gasp. It was a sum that could change lives. Certainly the life of one humble waiter who stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was unfolding before him. He was just a waiter. But why did the stranger call him soldier before leaving? As the customer signed the receipt, he turned to face the waiter. Their eyes met, and in that moment, a flicker of recognition passed between them. The customer's gaze softened, filled with a mixture of respect and shared understanding. "Thank you for your service," he said quietly, "soldier." With those words, he turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind a stunned silence and a mystery that would soon unravel. The waiter stood rooted to the spot, his mind reeling. How could this stranger know? The life he had left behind, the uniform he had once worn with pride, it was all supposed to be in the past. Yet somehow this man had seen through the disguise of apron and tray to the person beneath. Under the rice he found a folded paper, handwritten, "You taught me what dignity is." The next morning, as the waiter prepared for his shift, he found his lunchbox had been tampered with. Nestled beneath the meager portion of rice he had packed was a folded piece of paper. With trembling hands he opened it, his eyes scanning the handwritten message, the words blurred as tears welled up in his eyes. "You taught me what dignity is." Simple words, yet they carried the weight of years of unspoken struggle and quiet perseverance. In that moment, he realized that his silent battle had not gone unnoticed. Someone had seen him, truly seen him, and found value in his quiet strength. He never got emotional, but when he saw what was in the brown paper bag, he fell to his knees. As he tried to compose himself, a co-worker approached, holding out a plain brown paper bag. "This was left for you at the front desk," she said, curiosity evident in her voice. With shaking hands, he took the bag. It was heavier than he expected. As he opened it, the contents spilled out onto the table, and his world tilted on its axis.